A lot of the time, entrepreneurs will throw exorbitant amounts of money at their startup companies that are on a path to failure. They hope that the fires being put out are due to a lack of funding or marketing, whereas the truth lies in the fact that the fundamental visions and missions of these companies are the real reasons for their imminent demise. The same situation applies to Israel's HASBARA engine, more recently failing time after another, where it's causing knee-jerk reactions by Zionist leadership by increasing fiscal budgets, introducing restructuring, and forcing improved synergy amongst its intricate network, in the hope of saving the international reputation of the Zionist state.
And the other thing is, I hate they put out tapes all the time. Every night they're releasing tapes of a building falling down. They shouldn't be releasing tapes like that. That's why they're losing the PR war. Israel is absolutely losing the PR war.
Yes, Israel is indeed losing the public relations war. And why do many believe it is losing this war? One of the major criticisms of Israel, both internally and externally, lies with the belief that it suffers from a Hasbara problem. More needs to be done along the propaganda, quote-unquote, public policy, and state branding lines to fix the Hasbara mechanism and network, so that Israel can then properly project its positive image around the world. In Hebrew, the word Hasbara means explanation or clarification. The Zionist government would like you to believe that this actually refers to the exercise of public diplomacy or international image building by explaining policy or disseminating positive information about the Zionist state, especially during times when it's confronting major and repetitive criticism, whereas in actuality, Hasbara is a euphemism for substantial pro-Zionist propaganda that spins its web of deception in justifying the actions of the Zionist state. This Israeli apparatus is more sophisticated and elaborate than any other international apparatus, and it entails both governmental and private institutions, in addition to foreign government and institutions across the Western world. To provide more clarity on Hasbara, let me elaborate a little on the principles that characterize its mission statement. An obvious principle is its complete foundation on how perception shapes reality. And the Hasbara's responsibility is to, by hook or crook, and in every situation, make Israel appear always, and I mean always, as the victim. Israel is also surrounded by a constant threat by seen and unseen forces. Hasbara also exists to disallow any criticism of the Zionist state's actions and policies, by accusing those who convey or condone such criticism as anti-Semitic. Their message is that anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism, and most horrifically, to first keep the eyes and ears of the international society solely focused on the limited Israeli tragedies, true or untrue, and away from the more substantial victims, the Palestinians. And in case the real victims might get their 15 minutes of fame, then a strategy of dehumanizing them as much as possible is applied so that no one would feel sympathy with their person or cause. And to implement such cruel conditioning, the Hasbara apparatus is characterized by a wide and broad network of government, semi-public, and private institutions, both in Israel and internationally, that attempt to realize its colonial settler dream while also providing for all the justifications to its actions or reactions. Such institutions include the National Hasbara Headquarters that coordinates with the Prime Minister of Israel's Hasbara Department, with the Foreign Ministry Department of Media and Hasbara, the IDF's Spokespersons Division, the Ministry of Public Diplomacy and Diaspora Affairs, and the Ministry of Tourism. These governmental entities also then collaborate with pseudo-private institutions such as the Zionist World Organization, the Jewish Agency, Jewish National Fund, and the Karen Hayesod. These entities consolidate into what is known as the National Hasbara Forum, that links the synchronized Zionist ideologies, messages, impressions, narratives, and commentary. These outputs then get shared with the Hasbara's local and international agents, political figures within foreign governments, media outlets, the Internet Hasbara, and others, who then drive the message home on behalf of the Zionist state. The Hasbara web doesn't stop there. As part of the collective effort, fellowship programs offer scholarships to non-Israeli students through biased indoctrination. To better equip pro-Israeli student leaders, on key campuses to be more effective in their efforts to combat both anti-Semitism and anti-Israel propaganda, and to articulate an effective and sustained pro-Israel message on their campus. So Hasbara doesn't solely operate on a national and international level as a critical function of the Zionist state, or in driving its narrative through global political leaders that have either been indoctrinated much earlier, or have dual foreign Israeli citizenship, or who have their re-election purses lined by their Zionist associates. But Hasbara also focuses on creating a younger population of leadership and voices who are trained to propagandize the Zionist cause with a well-coordinated web of deceit. Examples of the Zionist state's peddling of deceit are fairly elaborate and extensive. Hasbara operates on several thresholds, those of the larger ideas that deal with the ideology of the Zionist purpose, and all the way down to specific illegal or inhumane events or actions that have to be justified to the global public. All, of course, have to do with the substantiation of Israel's existence and survival, as well as to the nature and events of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Concerning the fundamental status of the occupied territories, Hasbara's version explains that the entire land of Israel belongs exclusively to the Jewish people. The goal of Zionism is purely and strictly the Judaization of the Holy Land, whereas the anti-colonial, simpler explanation states that Palestinians in all their religious denominations are the indigenous population of Palestine, possessing the right of national self-determination. Another example comes with how Israel suffers a constant existential threat. Hasbara claims that Israel has a right to defend itself against all Arab terrorism, whereas the basic real position is that, like all oppressed people, Palestinians have the right to resist colonial occupation, even when the same colonial regimes attempt to criminalize it. Following colonial arguments, Hasbara claims that since Palestinians will never make peace, the only issue for Israel is its security. Israel is the victim and has the right to defend itself by any means necessary. The non-biased definition of this problem is that Israel is attempting to consolidate its colonialization of all of the occupied territories. The insecurity that Israel feels can only be resolved when Zionism's violent settler project is concluded. In response to the questions of apartheid, Hasbara clarifies that for Israel, this conflict is either a win or lose proposition. If Israel loses, all Israelis will be annihilated. The realist definition of this problem is that even though Jews do have religious and historical ties to the lands, only a solution based on human rights and international laws ensures a win-win and enduring solution where sacrifices from both sides must be made. And finally, as a more detailed example of a single event, Hasbara will relay to the global audience that a hospital was carefully targeted and was a justified attack because it was a communication and logistical base for terrorist activity, whereas the more accurate explanation was that it was a hospital indiscriminately bombed with hundreds killed and injured, was nothing more than an inhumane act, a strategy of devastation and eradication of the healthcare network so that the occupied territories become more inhospitable. Since its inception, the Zionist state has won many wars, even the public relations war up until the end of the 20th century. In the 21st century and up until the present moment, the tides have turned, and Israel has lost the advocacy of its cause, and its narrative is crumbling faster than the Zionists can come up with newer false justifications. Hasbara has used all kinds of deplorable attempts to generate the necessary collective sympathy. Terrorism, victimhood, then with more desperation, the killing of babies and the raping of women. None of these attempts seem to carry any weight, because none hold any truth. None that can be convinced of the Zionist mission will believe and concur with such narratives any longer. And this is when we witness the knee-jerk reactions to a sinking ship, removing buckets of water right back into the overwhelming Great Sea. The Israeli Foreign Ministry is multiplying its public diplomacy budget, also known as Hasbara spending, for 2025 to $150 million. Now you'd say, what is $150 million going to do to cover up for the actions of the Zionists, the IDF, and the illegal settlers? Well, when the foreign ministry is but one of tens of institutions that have their own Hasbara fiscal budgets, then you can imagine the level of funding that accrue to a more likely billions of dollars that are being channeled towards Zionist propaganda and deception. Social media and the increase of alternative news platforms have changed the game. Money is no longer the solution to the Hasbara mission. Everyone who is on the ground is today a news agency. Some credible, many others not so much. These agents of truth are not sharing narratives necessarily, but are sharing the real-time suffering and destruction imagery wrought upon by the Zionist state. No cover-ups or misdirection by the traditional media may sustain themselves. No lies can live beyond a short tenor, and hence can save Israel from itself and self-incrimination. When the truth surfaces and the entire world understands that there's only one explanation, the simplest one, because they see it before their eyes, raw and unadulterated. So when removing the Hasbara apparatus from the equation, what is left is but the misaligned, brutal, and barbaric policies and actions of the Zionist nation. Israel is not losing a war of explanations and how the public aligns or misaligns with said explanation. Israel is losing an ideology and policy war because its actions were and are still inhumane and unacceptable to each and every single human being. In today's world of connectivity and alternative media, this clarity has never been so obvious. Yet there's something that troubles me, that the loudest conventional news cycles have gradually moved on entirely, while the alternative options in parallel dwindle in the time and efforts allocated to the exposure of the truth regarding the misdeeds and inhumanity of the Zionist endeavor. More time-relevant elements of global news seem to overshadow the Palestinian struggle and dehumanization. Elections, natural disasters, and potential conflicts seem to have taken priority. Meanwhile, in the occupied territories, many more deaths go unnoticed. Land grabs and internationally unacceptable cross-border attacks happen without accountability. I worry for the Palestinians and their cause, that they'll again fall victim not only to the Zionist bombs and bullets, but fall prey to silence and in the eventual abandonment of their suffering. It is the mission of all humans that sympathize to never cease and desist in exposing the simplest of explanations concerning the Zionist state's behavior. It is the duty of all those who won't stand for injustice to be loud and shout out when the strong bully the weak, to post, to tweet, to do whatever one can so that no one forgets the Palestinian struggle and tragedy, and also to remind the world that oppressors, medieval in their behavior, have to be stopped in their tracks with the truth. That is our Hasbara, the simplest kind, the truth.